All right, let's start this morning with our top story, which is our never-ending war in Afghanistan, the longest war in American history at 20 years long. And we thought it was coming to an end as President Biden pulled troops out. Well, I guess what? He's now caving to the military-industrial complex and sending troops back into Afghanistan, although he's not admitting it as much. Even in press conferences, he's not really admitting as much, but that's exactly what's happening. We got word that the Marines and other branches of the military are heading back into Afghanistan. This whole thing is being sold to us by the warmongering media, by the way, that is founded by the military-industrial complex. They've won. I mean, they've essentially won, right? You've seen it over the past few days. All you need to do, I mean, even like we showed yesterday, like go to Google News, here are the top stories on Google News, like Biden administration tries to mobilize international diplomatic effort to halt the Taliban. Politico Biden on Afghanistan, not my problem. Afghan capital may fall within weeks as Taliban fighters advance across the country.
Well, now understand too, when they say they're going to pull out, they don't ever pull out completely. We still leave secret troops. We still leave the private military
Contractors.
over there, contractors. So it's like we never actually leave. But what they're fighting is, the troops staying over there.
Yeah. Which is not true. I mean, of course, they're not leaving. Of course, they're going to stay there in some capacity. Again, we have 90 military bases around the world. Why would we think
900?
900. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Yeah,
900. Yeah. And by the way, we built a massive complex over there. In the embassy, right? So we built a massive, basically our own fort. Right? We built Bagram Airfield. We built all of these things, and we abandoned them in part. And now we're going back to them. Well, Caitlin Johnston, who's done she's amazing. She writes a lot about this. And one of the things she wrote is that one of the weirdest things about the mass media propaganda, which manipulates the way people think, act, and vote, is the fact that the mainstream news outlets routinely cite the employees of think tanks that are sponsored by war profiteers and government powers and expert sources for their reports, and they just get away with it. Now, if you've watched this show for any length of time, you know that I've called out the mainstream media by putting on generals and members of the military on their air who are paid for or they're part of think tanks, military industrial complex think tanks, or they're cited in news articles all the time. Here's an example, right? She points this out. Here's a Sky News Australia piece, right, on the social media. Sky News is sharing this story with even more incendiary caption. China now has the military arsenal to pose the greatest threat to the Australian mainland since World War II. Experts warn. Well, guess what? The experts in question, as she points out, are the Lowy Institute, named after its billionaire founder, which is funded by multiple branches of the Australian government, including the ASIO and the Department of Defense, by major financial institutions, and by weapons manufacturers like Boeing. The author of the Lowy Institute report these stories are citing is Thomas Shugart, himself an employee of the notorious Center for the New American Security, a Biden administration-aligned warmongering think tank that receives funding from top war profiteers Boeing, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Raytheon.
Do we secretly own Australia somehow? Did we need kangaroo meat and take them over like Hawaii and pineapple? Like, what's going on?
Probably. I mean, it's amazing to see. By the way, I'm sure you've seen the horrific videos by the Australian special forces in Afghanistan. And just like the brutal murders of those Afghan farmers there, that body cam footage was finally leaked, and it was horrifying. Literally, like Afghan farmers in their fields just being shot in the head by Australian soldiers. Just collateral damage. Who cares, right? Who cares?
This is them than me, right? Isn't that what they say?
Yeah. And he's just like swearing at the guy the whole time. He's like, do you want me to take out this guy? You want me to take out this guy? And he just looks over at his commanding officer, and the commanding officer just kind of shrugs. It's like, whatever you want to do. He just shoots him in the head. That's what we do.
That dude that came back that had been just shooting people, knifing people, came back and was basically labeled a hero. And the guy was basically a serial killer.
Yeah.
I don't remember his name, but.
Oh, and you can't call these people out, right? No, it's patriotism, right? This is patriotism.
They were doing their duty.
Well, the military
they were keeping us safe.
Exactly. Well, the military-industrial complex has, and their think tank, war profiteering, war-mongering guys have been all over TV over the past week. I'm sure you've seen the headlines, right? You can't look anywhere and not see. Next, we're going to go to this special expert who was formerly in Afghanistan and is now, we won't disclose or tell you where he currently works, but he works at like a military defense contract think tank. So he makes money off of keeping war going, right? That's Ryan Crocker. So I just couldn't believe this. I was watching this interview unfold live on Bloomberg, and I just wanted to throw my remote control through the television. So watch this sycophantic mainstream media pushing of the war narrative, like let's get back into war. Watch this.
We lost thousands, lost death and injury, thousands of American personnel. They've got to fight for themselves.
Ryan Crocker served as U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan, as well as to Pakistan and Iraq and several other countries. He holds the rank of career ambassador. That's the highest in the Foreign Service. And we welcome him now to Bloomberg. So, Mr.
He is, he's just I might as well have just called him he's God, frankly. He's God. He's God of the military.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for being with us. You lived over there. You are ambassador over there. It sounds like it's even worse than we hear. I saw today that the finance minister has quit and left the country. They're replacing the chief of staff of the military. How bad is it?
It's really bad. It's really bad, Ryan. We got to right. It's really bad. Let me just tell you, we got to get over there as soon as we can.
It is pretty bad, and I think it's going to get worse. I just was listening again to President Biden. So the thing on this, David, these talks with the Taliban that we initiated under President Trump, those were not peace negotiations. Basically, it was a surrender process. We're going home. Give us the best deal you can. And that, of course, completely delegitimized the Kabul government and President Ghani. We were talking to his enemy, and he was not in the room, and that is the way it continued for months. So it is beyond disingenuous for the president to say now we've made all these inputs and it's up to them to fight for their own country when he embraced the process and he owns it lock, stock, and barrel, President Trump's process, guaranteeing that the government would probably not survive.
Well, we hear day after day the United States government say there's got to be a diplomatic solution. I believe that Ambassador Khalilzad right now is in Doha talking to people from the Taliban saying you've got to have a diplomatic solution because otherwise you'll be an outcast. Is there any prospect at this point for a diplomatic solution?
Absolutely none.
So, no diplomacy.
With the same Taliban we've sent money to and helped and fought with alongside in like Syria and stuff, that same Taliban won't negotiate with us?
It's amazing. And we've given them weapons over the years. I mean, they're the Mujahideen. Basically, we armed them, against the Soviets. I mean, okay.
I mean, at this point, they may as well be called the U.S. Taliban.
Yeah. Yeah, we've propped them up for so long. And so let me just get this right. There's no diplomatic solution. So the only solution, and by the way, there always is a diplomatic solution, you moron. And the only solution is war. The only solution is for us to go back in there. We've been there for 20 years. We spent $2 trillion in Afghanistan, training their troops and killing innocent civilians and endlessly bombing. I saw another expert on Afghanistan this morning, and I just, again, wanted to throw my remote through the television. I couldn't believe, but this is the crap that you see on mainstream media all the time. Her name is Shepnam, and her family had escaped Afghanistan years ago. She set up camp in Britain, and she is part of a conservative group that is, absolutely wants basically endless American occupation of Afghanistan. That's basically what she's calling for. Listen to her argue for us to basically stay there in perpetuity, and that us moving out after 20 years was way too premature. Like, this is too early for us to have gotten out of this endless war.
The mission was never going to be simple. Afghanistan is a deeply corrupt country, paralyzed with decades of conflict, proxy interference, and internal tribal strife. But Britain did play a huge part. Sure, we went in to clear out the Taliban, and who had done so much to help Al Qaeda mount its deadly assault in America in September 11th. But we also promised the people of Afghanistan that we will rebuild the war-torn state so that they could live in peace. In the last 20 years, we did that. Yes, it wasn't easy. The other aspect is that there's a common misconception that the US or the West somehow imposed democracy on Afghanistan. In reality, Afghans welcomed the opportunity to live in a more liberal country after the Taliban were forced out. Today, an entire generation of young people have been brought up on liberal Western democratic values. And it's a substantial group in a country where over 70% are under 25-year-old.
Okay, so we spent $2 trillion after 20 years. We've given them that infrastructure. We've spent more in Afghanistan than we do in the United States on infrastructure. It's time to go home.
Well,
it's time to get out.
I mean, what's going to happen if it's embrace our democracy or die? Like, you don't have very many choices anyway. I mean, and the thing is, like you're saying, like she wants us to stay there. Like we're still in Germany. Like, would they be up in arms if we were leaving or outside of Germany? We have bases. We have bases wherever we've been. We have bases still there, and we never leave. So It's like, do you want us to occupy these places forever?
She says we should just stay for. I watched another interview. She said we should just stay for a few more years, just a few more years. She said we were almost there. She said we were almost there. That's how she described it. We were almost there, so that they would be able to be self-sufficient. We were almost there. But 20 years, you're almost there. Okay.
And this is an interview she's doing, right?
Yeah. And
so
by the way,
reading this.
By the way, I saw her in a separate interview on Bloomberg where she's literally reading almost the exact same thing that she's written on her screen, like the exact same thing, almost verbatim. And then the anchor has to get into word edgewise and interrupt her. She's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Yeah, I was just so caught up in reading what I had written here, like my monologue on the air.
Year-old. So allowing Afghanistan to fail will definitely see, first of all, mass migration from those who can afford to flee to Europe, and a huge humanitarian disaster for those who have no choice but to remain. And I think we're very naive, we're not thinking in the long term if we assume that just because the Taliban rule or the Taliban control of Afghanistan is not going to affect us in the short term, that it won't affect us long term.
Yeah, but
so she's arguing that basically it's going to come for us. That when the Taliban takes over Afghanistan, this is a major threat to the United States. Like, you better watch out. I got news for you. I'm not scared of the Taliban. I'll be honest with you. I'm more scared about what's going on in our own country than I am the Taliban, for crying out loud. I mean, I'm more scared about going to a shopping mall in the United States. I'm more scared about going to a movie theater in the United States.
And could you imagine if we had 900 homeless shelters with as much administration and work going on as we have in those bases overseas to fight homelessness? Like, if we funded it and had people working and doing the things, feeding people and helping people, 900 homeless shelters around this country, what that would do compared to 900 bases where we're spending money to kill people?
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? I was having a conversation the other night about this with a Marine Corps family that had, a lot of these embassy children around the world in different countries, they end up going to basically State Department funded schools that are actually better than the United States school system. Isn't that funny? Like, to get a better U.S. education, leave the U.S. and go to a U.S.-based school in another country. No joke. They hire the best teachers. That's almost like
going to a U.S.-based fast food joint in another country. You get far better quality food.
Isn't it funny? Sad but true. But we can't talk about that, right? It makes people uncomfortable to admit the truth here. But these are the people that are on the air. Like, the West, and we're going to talk about this as 9/11 approaches. You absolutely better be fearful of the Taliban, because they're coming for you. No, they're not. No, they're not. They want tribal control. There's tribal warfare going on. As she mentions at the very beginning, this is not easy, and it goes back decades and generations, and we are going to solve it?
Well, and think about this. What do? We go over there and we get in the middle of these wars that have been happening for thousands of years. And what do? We create a common enemy for them. That makes them unite against one common enemy. So what we are doing actually is bringing people that have been fighting each other for 1,000 years together to fight us. Right. And we create terrorists by what we're doing.
And then we leave and then okay, I guess we got to go back to fighting ourselves, fighting each other again. Like, why are we stepping in between this? Why are we getting in the middle of this? This is not our war to fight. And so now we're sending thousands of troops back once again into Afghanistan. For what? What is the end game here? What is the end game? Well, I got news for you. If you listen to the mainstream media, the end game is an endless war, an endless occupation that props up the military-industrial complex. That is it. Lock, stock, and barrel. That's it. That's the whole argument. And watch as this establishment, like this was on Fox yesterday. I mean, bring out the generals. Get the generals. Hey, get the generals on speed dial. We need them right now to prop up this phony war.
We need to ask, with the Taliban marching through Afghanistan, was it a mistake for the U.S. to pull out? That's a big issue. Joining us now to discuss.
By the way, was it a mistake for us to pull out? Like, let's frame this. Yeah, it was a huge mistake, right? We should just get endless war.
General Jack Keane, Fox News senior strategic analyst. General Keane, as always, sir, thank you for coming.
By the way, what is a strategic analyst?
A strategic.
He's a senior strategic analyst.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not on the ground. I'm just reading reports. The Taliban, which is a terrorist organization, is sweeping through provincial capitals. It may not be long before they take over the capital in Kabul. And I want to ask you, what is going on here? Who is losing? Why are we losing this battle or this war or this country?
Great question.
Yeah, great question.
That wasn't a great question. That wasn't even a question. Like, what? That was that was a word salad. What the hell? That wasn't a question.
And did Larry Kudlow, just say losing our country?
Yeah. That was a great question, Larry. Great question, Larry. Like, this is...
The Taliban, which is a terrorist organization, is sweeping through provincial capitals. It may not be long before they take over the capital in Kabul. And I want to ask you, what is going on here? Who is losing? Why are we losing this battle or this war or this country?
Yeah, great question, Larry. We said from the outset that President Biden was likely going to regret the decision he made. He made it so our viewers understand over the objections of the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, the Chairman of Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, his field commanders in Afghanistan.
Oh, so I just want to be clear. He wanted to leave Afghanistan over the objections of military leaders who are propped up by the military-industrial complex. That's shocking. Wow, I didn't see that coming. By the way,
I want to get the year of the footage they're playing in the background, because how sure are we that that's like recent footage?
Oh yeah,
they've been busted playing old footage on these news shows.
Yeah, exactly. And Larry's like, I don't know, I haven't been there. I haven't been to Kabul. I don't know what's going on.
Members of his own national.
So when was the last time we actually had cameras there that we're getting reports? We're getting actual footage out of this
security team. And interesting enough, just about all of the NATO coalition members that are participating in Afghanistan supporting the government and the security forces, they wanted to stay. They thought it was a modest commitment to prevent the return of al-Qaeda and the overthrow of the Taliban. So where are we now? I think when the president made that decision, I think he believed in his own mind that it was an acceptable risk that the Taliban taking over Afghanistan was not imminent, and there would likely be time for possibly some negotiations to take place and get an agreement as opposed to an overthrow. Well, that assumption is fundamentally flawed, and we see the results of the Taliban having huge momentum and taking down one provincial capital and one major city after another.
So,
I just got to comment on that photo really quick. You have a photographer that's taking a photo laying down in front of those guns that they're aiming. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, hold on, you guys, don't shoot yet. I'm going to lay in front of you, aim your guns at me so I can get this awesome photo.
Photo op. Pretend like you're killing people. Pretend like you're just blowing up villages. So he also, there's no diplomatic solution here. There's no diplomatic solution, right? But he was also one of the people who was out there saying there is a diplomatic solution under Trump, right? That I think what Trump is trying to do here and negotiate with the Taliban to get out of there, that's smart. So now he's saying that, no, there is no diplomatic solution. So I love how these guys just totally flip around, right? So now there's no diplomatic solution. So what do we need to do? We need to send thousands of people back in there. And literally hearing these people say, yes, it's not enough to just send a few thousand. We had 100,000. Okay. I mean, how many people do you want there? If we couldn't do it with that many, and you think that 2,000 was sufficient, that's how many were still there when we removed them. So now we removed 2,000 troops and now it's a catastrophe. But you don't think 2,000 is enough. So we're going to send more than 2,000 back now?
Why don't we just send some COVID over there? It's ridiculous. I say this all the time, like General Wesley Clark said, when you're a hammer, every problem's got to be a nail. And now we're looking for the nail. Like, we got this big hammer over there. We can't pull the hammer out because, we're going to lose all this funding.
So send back the troops for an endless war. What's the end game? The end game is nation building, and we're just going to have a permanent base there. Permanent, so we just can keep the Taliban at bay. Airstrikes. And one of the things that the Shepnam said, this woman, she says, what's going to happen? Here's what's going to happen. She said, what's going to happen is now thousands. She's like, I have women calling me and they're just terrified. I have thousands of women and children calling me, asking for help to get out of here. That's what she said.
The mission was never going to be simple. Afghanistan's a deeply corrupt country.
And so she said, women and children, innocent people are going to die now. That's what she said.
As if they already weren't.
And she said, America, you will have the blood on your hands, basically. These innocents will die. I'm like, are you not paying attention to how many innocents have been killed as a result of our airstrikes and attacks?
Right, it's like, how can you can't get any more blood on our hands.
Right, wait a minute, are you totally discounting the fact that we've leveled schools? Like, we've literally blown up schools.
Well, and we were doing what are called double taps, where we would bomb an area, we would circle back around, and then we'd go in and hit the first responders.
Right. Yeah. Hey, they're actually bringing, nurses to help out. Oh, let's bomb those too. So we're taking out ambulances as well.
Yeah, we were bombing funerals even.
So there you go. That's Afghanistan. Get ready to head back in Afghanistan. You thought that we were leaving. No. No, we're not. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. You can also become a channel member by going to morninginvest.com/join, where you can stick it to the mainstream media and support independent journalism. We're able to bring you the stories that you won't see on any of the major billionaire-backed networks. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time, everyone.